Hello everyone, this is part 54 of What If Naruto Meets the Nine Tails Early, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Sakura-san, do you know what's wrong with Lee-san? Asked Hinata. Both her and Naruto had encountered Lee on their way to a training ground and Lee looked to be missing something significant, his youth. I've got a pretty good idea, replied Sakura. Do you remember Kurama Yakumo? Hinata nodded instantly, knowing the girl rather well thanks to Kurenai-sensei. She was an incredibly powerful genjutsu user who had been placed under Kurenai's tutelage in the early years until it was determined that Yakumo's powers had led to the birth of a demon in Yakumo's psyche. This forced Kurenai and the Hokage to have her powers sealed until a few years later when a mission by Team 8 led to the separation of Yakumo's demon personality and her powers, allowing her to access her genjutsu abilities without fear of the demon personality taking over. A little bit, replied Naruto. He had met the girl once or twice thanks to Hinata and he had heard the stories from his girlfriend. What does she have to do with Lee? Did she call him a loser or something? Sakura shook her head. It's a rather long story, we might want to go find a seat while I tell you. Flashback, almost 2 years ago. For a certain green spandex-clad Chunin, today was a normal day, filled with youthful training. As Lee was on his 105th lap through Konoha, he passed by a young girl sitting on a bench, looking rather down. For some reason, Lee was immediately drawn to said girl. She was rather pretty, possessing brown hair and a fair complexion. But her looks weren't what caught Lee's attention. For some reason, Lee could feel that this girl's youthful spark was on the verge of fading into nothing, and there was no way he'd let something like that happen until he found out what was going on and if there was anything he could do to help save it. Excuse me, is something wrong? Asked Lee politely as he walked over towards the girl. Just leave, said the girl before she realized who it was. No wait, you're him, Rock Lee. You're the person who became a ninja on taijutsu alone. That I am. And if I may ask, what is your name? Asked Lee. Kurama Yakumo, replied Yakumo. May I ask why a beautiful young lady like yourself is so down? It's unbefitting of someone who looks like they should be bursting with youth, asked Lee. It's nothing of your concern, replied a depressed Yakumo. That may be, but perhaps there is something I can do to help, offered the spandex-clad Lee. Please at least tell me why you are so down. After a few moments, Yakumo finally decided to open up and explain her situation to Lee. You see, I was born with a weak body, yet I possess the entirety of my clan's Kekkei Genkai. Our bloodline greatly enhances our genjutsu abilities to the point where we can actually make the brain to reflect anything that happens to them. However, I've tried my hardest to become a ninja, following your example and focusing solely on my genjutsu abilities, but I've just been told that my body's still too weak to perform the duties required of a shinobi. I see. The ninja way you and I have chosen certainly is a difficult one. It is one that requires hard work and an unwavering dedication, said Lee. But it is the one path of the ninja that I truly believe will shine the brightest in the end. But how am I supposed to become a shinobi if my body's too weak to handle being one? Asked Yakumo. Well, a little physical exercise has never hurt me, replied Lee. The body can be strengthened, no matter how weak it may seem at first. With a strong desire to drive you forward, nothing can stop you from achieving your dreams. I see. Then I'll just work harder to get stronger so that I can be a shinobi. Exclaimed a re-energized Yakumo. And if you wouldn't mind, I would like to help you. It's always nice to have someone supporting you every step of the way, explained Lee. Guy-sensei was there for me, and I will be there for you if you will let me. End flashback. After that day, those two began hanging out more and more and eventually Yakumo was recognized as a shinobi, explained Sakura. That was almost a year and a half ago and she just made Chunin at the last exam. Since her and Lee met, she had kind of been joining our group a lot and we all honestly wondered when those two would ever hook up. And then, almost 2 months ago, they had their first date. They're a really cute couple and there really is a strong chemistry between them. Unfortunately, there are also a lot of issues. Issues? Asked Naruto. Her clan. The Kurama clan is actually one of Konoha's more noble clans, and seeing as Yakumo is not only the heiress, but also the sole possessor of their full Kekkei Genkai, they are rather protective of her, said Sakura. Since Lee was originally an orphan and he also has his condition that takes away his ninjutsu and genjutsu abilities, they don't approve of a relationship between their heiress and some talentless loser. Anyone with a brain could tell that Sakura was disgusted and struggling to spit out that last part. While her feelings and heart belonged to Sasuke, she had a great deal of respect for Lee and wanted desperately to help Lee find that special someone. What? That's just not right. Bushy Brows is one of the strongest ninja I know. I even fought him and I can say without question Lee is most definitely not a loser, Tobio declared Naruto. Damn it, I can't stand clans like that who think that they're too good for someone. Sakura just stood there, trying her best to comprehend Naruto's logic. While she understood where her blonde teammate was coming from, she couldn't help but feel that his actions were slightly contradicting what he was saying. And here you are dating a Hyuga. So I know that Lee wouldn't let her clan get him down. So what happened then to get Lee into this slump he's in? Asked Naruto. Flashback, just earlier today. Yosh. I can't wait for today's most youthful training session with Yakumo-chan. Proclaimed Lee as he marched his way through the streets of Konoha and towards the clan compound of the Kurama clan. As Lee came into view of the compound, he saw the two guards standing outside the gate. By this point in time, the guards had gotten somewhat used to the bushy brow Chunon's visitations and merely nodded as Lee passed them. However, when he reached the house where Yakumo lived in, he saw her uncle and current head of the clan, Unkai, there to greet him. Lee knew Unkai just about hated him, but he didn't care. All he cared about was his day training with Yakumo and curry dinner they were looking forward to in the evening. However, that wasn't destined to happen as Unkai stepped forward. Kurama-sama, I am here to request Yakumo-san's presence to train with me today, addressed Lee. I must apologize, but our heiress will not be associating herself with a loser like you, spoke Unkai, trying to intimidate Lee. Nor will you be welcome here anymore. We are one of Konoha's most noble clan and as I have told you before, we do not associate with your kind. Lee had heard this before and despite the clan head's attempts to dissuade Lee from their heiress. But this time was different as Yakumo actually stepped out from the doors and approached Lee. Lee, I must apologize, but I no longer wish to see you. In fact, the only reason I have been putting up with you is so that I could become strong enough to become a shinobi and honor my clan. As such, I must ask that you leave and not return. Lee's eyes widened in shock. Did Yakumo-chan really just say that to him? Did she really just use him to help herself along? Had she really just tossed aside all those youth-filled moments they had shared together? He couldn't believe what had just happened and reached forward towards Yakumo, hoping this was all just some illusion. However, he felt his own hand being away by the girl he had fallen for. Don't you dare touch me, you worthless loser, growled Yakumo. Lee was shocked at this. Never once had Yakumo used that tone on him. That tone carried hints of hatefulness and disappointment, something that the Yakumo he had come to know was anything but. Looking into her eyes, Lee could tell that she wasn't playing around and she meant what she said. Trying to hold back his own tears, Lee quickly made his way out of the compound, heartbroken. Had he looked back, he would have seen a sinister grin on Unkai's face. End flashback. What? Please tell me you're not serious, Sakura-chan. Why would anyone do something like that to Bushy Brows? Shouted Naruto. I know it doesn't sound pretty, but Yakumo wasn't at her clan's compound this morning. She was with Kurenai-sensei and Inoiki-san since early this morning, said Sakura. While the whole mental demon issue had been resolved, Inoiki-san's been checking up on her to be sure there's no recurrence of it. I can say for certainty that Yakumo was not at the compound when Lee was there. Then what the hell happened? Asked Naruto. Genjutsu. I wouldn't put it past them to use a genjutsu on Lee when he first entered the compound to trick him into seeing what he did, said Sakura. Unfortunately, when I went to try and find Yakumo, she was still in her session with Inoiki-san. That's why I want to find Lee and try and explain this to him before he does anything stupid. I see. Don't worry, I'll find him, Sakura-chan, said Naruto before making a familiar hand sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Immediately, Dozens of Narutos popped into existence and scattered throughout the village in search of their spandex-wearing friend. Hyuga clan compound. Doton, Earth Dragon Bullet! Exclaimed a mid-teen branch shinobi as he was displaying his newest jutsu to some of his friends and family within the clan. Wow, that's amazing! Exclaimed one of the younger Hyugas there who was still the age of an academy student. A few of the other younger Hyugas said similar things to the older Hyuga teen, until they heard a cough coming from behind. All of them paled to see the elder Aro standing at the gate of the courtyard in which they were in. Need I remind you that such ninjutsu is below a Hyuga? Asked Aro as he raised his wrinkled brow. But Aro-sama, said Hyuga teen was stopped cold as he saw Aro make a motion with his hands to form a seal. The same hand seal that was feared by all the branch and the one that kept them oppressed. You were what? You are a Hyuga and as such don't need to rely on cheap tricks to prove that the Hyuga are strong, said Aro. Or do you need a reminder? But, I understand. I apologize Aro-sama for my inappropriate behavior, bowed the teen, hoping for Kami's sake that Aro would lower his hands without activating the seal. Thankfully today, the branch teen would catch a break as Aro just turned his back and walked away. I will accept your apology this once, but do not let me catch you practicing ninjutsu outside the clan's designated jutsus for exams such as the Jonin exams, spoke Aro before leaving. As everyone there let out a sigh of relief, no one realized that there was another observer. Aro, you old fool, ninjutsu is not a weakness, nor is it a bunch of cheap tricks. While I agree that our taijutsu is rather effective, there are a few glaring weaknesses. One of the most obvious is that by using solely taijutsu, it requires us to fight at close range, and if we were to face someone with strong mid to long range capabilities, we would certainly be defeated. Ninjutsu is nothing to discourage as it can be used to add a completely different element into our fighting style, either assisting the yukin itself or giving us the ability to fight against opponents specializing in mid to long ranged attacks, thought the observer. You were there for Hinata-sama's match. It's blatantly obvious that our traditional styles are growing predictable and outdated. The only reason Hinata-sama was able to win her match was because of her ability to adapt to something new. And the ability to be able to adapt is nothing to scoff at. I intend to teach you that lesson personally soon. Back around Konoha. He did what? Came shouts from the Yamanaka compound. Said shouts belonged to one Yakumo Kurama. It didn't take Naruto's clones too long to find Lee, after all. Bright green spandex was almost as easy to pick out of a crowd as Kami now, orange was, and bring him to the Yamanaka compound where Yakumo had just finished her psychiatric evaluation with Inoiki. It's like I said, your uncle used a genjutsu on Lee to make Lee think you were just tossing him aside and try to break him, said Sakura. Lee-kun, I'm so sorry. I would never, apologized Yakumo to tearing Lee. It's okay Yakumo-chan. I am ashamed that I could have thought you could ever act so unyouthful. For that, I shall climb up the Hokage monument with both legs and one arm tied behind my back, and if I cannot, then I will. Lee was stopped as Yakumo proceeded to K her bushy-eyebrowed boyfriend, effectively stopping his youth-filled proclamation. Oh God, thank goodness that's over! Exclaimed a relived voice that was familiar to Naruto. As the blonde Jinchuriki turned to the door, standing there was a platinum blonde, purple-wearing Ino. Is that Naruto? Ino, asked Naruto, tilting his head. Oh my God, it is you! Exclaimed Ino. When did you get back? Wow, Naruto actually looks kind of hot with that coat on. Is that really the same blonde idiot from back in the academy? Kind of yesterday. I ran into Shikamaru and he said to stop by barbecue to meet up with you, Chuji, and Asuma-sensei later tonight, but I was kind of dragged here due to a little problem, said Naruto, pointing towards Lee and Yakumo. Ino let out a sigh. I see the Kurama clan's giving them problems again. Everyone just nodded as Sakura explained everything to Ino. Yikes, and I thought Anko-sensei was cruel. You mean that crazy Snake B? Asked Naruto as a chill ran down his spine. Yeah, I've been training under her for the past 2 years in interrogation and infiltration. At least until she got her genin team, said Ino. But the question is, what do we do with Lee? It's obvious that the clan doesn't want those two together, and this is just one step closer to them literally throwing Lee out. I still don't understand. Lee's one of the greatest guys I know. If they won't accept Lee being with Yakumo, then who will they accept? Asked Naruto as a slight tic appeared on Sakura's forehead and Ino wished her fellow blonde didn't answer that. If they had their way, they'd want Yakumo to be with Sasuke-kun, said Ino as she looked over towards her fuming pink-haired. Oh hell no. They aren't getting my Sasuke-kun. Raged inner Sakura. Even though something was telling him that he'd regret this, Naruto decided to tell of an idea that just came to him. You know, if Team actually was here, we could use that. If Sasuke is what they want, then why not just have Sasuke go out with Yakumo, said Naruto just as he heard the sound of cracking knuckles. What did you say? Growled Sakura. Hold on, Sakura. Naruto might actually be onto something, realized Ino. What if Yakumo goes out with Sasuke-kun and you go out with Lee? And when they're away from the Kuramas, you guys just switch dates until it is time to go home. That way, Yakumo can get out of the house and spend some time with Lee, and until we can think of some way to prove to them that Lee is right for her, they'll think that Yakumo is dating the great Uchiha, as they put it, and lighten up on her. I don't like the idea of Sasuke-kun going out with another girl, but if they aren't really going out and it's to help Lee, then I suppose. But the problem is that Sasuke-kun isn't supposed to be home for at least a week, and since Kurama-san is on the council, he knows that Sasuke won't be home for some time, said Sakura. Like I said, it's just an idea, said Ino, completely forgetting the idea was originally Naruto's. Until then, I think Yakumo and Lee are only going to find time together when everyone from our group gets together. You know, I guess we could get everyone together tonight to welcome Naruto back. And we also do need to make it so that Lee's not as susceptible to genjutsu, said Sakura. We saw today that the Kurama clan's not against using genjutsu to try and separate them. Perhaps Kurenai-sensei knows something that can help Lee. But I do agree that we can do a get-together tonight, seeing as just about everyone is in town. Great. Hey Kurenai-sensei, think you can bring Yakumo to barbecue tonight around 6:30? Asked Ino to the genjutsu mistress who was listening in on the conversation with Inoiki. Sure, smiled Kurenai. Everyone, thank you, spoke Lee. Don't mention it, bushy brows, replied Naruto. You two are happy together and we don't want to see some dumb clan politics come between true love, said Ino, getting a blush out of Lee and Yakumo and a giggle out of Hinata. Unfortunately, we won't be able to do much more until Sasuke-kun gets back and we can try our new plan out. You know, I just thought of something else, said Naruto with a foxy grin on his face. I wonder what Yakumo's clan would say when they found out the clan was named after a certain giant fox. What are you talking about? Asked Ino as Sakura actually laughed when she realized that the Kurama clan shared a name with Kurama, the very same Kyuubi who attacked the village 15 years ago. The kid would be referring to me, said a voice that most certainly wasn't Naruto's coming from Naruto's mouth. My name is Kurama. What are you talking about? You're Naruto. Have you actually gotten dumber over the past 2 years? Asked Ino. The kid is Naruto, I'm Kurama, but you probably know me as the Kyuubi. Just as Kurama said that, the sound of coughing and spitting tea could be heard as everyone looked over towards a gagging Inoiki and a wide-eyed Kurenai. Crap, I forgot about those two. A lengthy explanation later. So what you're saying is that you attacked the village, controlled by a genjutsu? Asked Kurenai to the Kyuubi-possessed Naruto. Kurama just nodded. Ask the Hokage as you need verification, but it's true, replied Kurama. And since you're speaking to us, does that mean? Inoiki gulped. Yes, the seal's been released for almost a year now, replied Kurama. You know, the fact that the Kyuubi, Kurama hasn't tried anything unyouthful with the seal open should at least speak for something, said Lee. After all, he did help Naruto-kun with the removal of Neji's caged bird seal. Kuramoutif Naruto face-palmed himself as Lee realized that wasn't supposed to be said and everyone's attention turned to Naruto. You got rid of the Hyuga's caged bird seal? Asked Kurenai in disbelief, with a glint of hope showing itself in her eyes. Taking back control of his body, Naruto just grinned and rubbed the back of his head. Kind of, but that really was supposed to remain a secret, said Naruto, sending a pleading look to Ino. If the elders find out about this, then the entire branch family of the Hyuga clan could be in danger. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. I might like spreading rumors, but even I know when some things are better kept a secret, said Ino. Naruto, if you really did that, I was wondering if you could do a friend of mine a little favor, asked a hopeful Kurenai. Sure. What is it? Asked Naruto. I was wondering if it wouldn't be too much for you to take a look at Anko's cursed seal, asked Kurenai. Something that most of the Konoha 15 had learned over the past few years was that Kurenai and Anko were in fact close friends, almost to the sisterly point, with one another, and Kurenai was one of the very few people in the village whom Anko actually trusted. You mean the crazy snake lady? Asked Naruto, earning a glaring nod from Kurenai. I mean, I can take a look. If you don't mind me asking, how long has she had that seal on? She had it on since Orochimaru left the village, just over 13 years ago, said Kurenai. Great, another longer seal, muttered Naruto. I suppose I could take a look at it whenever she gets back from her mission if I'm not on a mission myself. It'll give me a chance to test out Kurama's theory anyways, but hopefully I can find another way to remove that seal without resorting to that. That? Asked everyone but Lee and Hinata. I'll show you guys some other time. It was the seal I used to rid Neji of his, replied Naruto. Thank you, and I'm sure Anko would be more than grateful as well, said Kurenai. That's what I'm afraid of, gulped Naruto. Now, about this whole Kyuubi deal, said Kurenai, getting back on topic. A few hours later, Naruto had finally managed to convince Kurenai and Inoki that having his seal released wasn't exactly a bad thing, and that was only after Kurenai bolted out to find Jiraiya, who had been researching at the time she found him. Needless to say, Jiraiya would be having nightmares regarding women bearing something women shouldn't have and scheduling a few appointments with Inoki due to a genjutsu Kurenai cast on him. But back to the story, and drag his perverted and traumatized back to confirm that Naruto and the Kyuubi weren't actually a threat. Finally, he and Hinata were on their way to a training ground, eager to see what the other had learned over the past 2 years. The two stared out with a simple taijutsu spar, and Naruto found himself unable to even land a hit on Hinata, due to the great increase in her own agility and grace that she had developed over the years. Her Yusho fighting style was really turning into something amazing, and while Hinata looked as if she was at home on a dance floor, Naruto was fumbling around like he had 2 left feet. That didn't mean that Naruto had forgotten anything about his own increased taijutsu abilities, it's just that there was no comparison between his and Hinata's. And add into that the fact that if he were an enemy, every time he was tagged would have resulted in a portion of his own chakra system being completely obliterated. Let's just say Hinata was one of the last people you wanted to fight in hand-to-hand combat. Next up for them was weapons usage, and this was where Naruto made up for his less than spectacular performance from their little dance contest previously. While Hinata was no weapons user, she still had maintained some level of proficiency with the standard kunai and even the tanto that she had been awarded upon achieving chunin rank. But compared to Naruto's usage of his sword, she found herself in the same position Naruto did back when they were sparring with taijutsu. Wow, Naruto-kun, you've gotten really strong. I couldn't keep up with you in that last fight at all, complimented. Hey, thanks Hinata-chan. You were really amazing, especially with your taijutsu, replied Naruto, earning a slight blush from Hinata. So did you learn any amazing jutsu? Well, I did learn a few others while you were gone. I may have also developed 1 or 2 of my own, said Hinata. How about you? Well, I really didn't learn as many jutsus as I wish I had. Ero Sennin wanted me to make my own, but he did teach me how to use water and fire jutsu, replied Naruto. You can use water jutsus? Asked Hinata with a perked interest as she received a nod from Naruto. That's great. It turns out water is my second element. Really? Hey, think you can show me 1 or 2? Asked Naruto. Hinata nodded and walked over towards the stream that flowed through the training ground. Suten, water whip, the pale-eyed beauty called out, and a whip of water began to form around her hand. Lashing out with the water whip, it wrapped around Naruto, and with a tug, and as little resistance as possible by Naruto, Hinata pulled Naruto towards her into a quick K that left them both giggling afterwards. So is your next jutsu something that will get me out of this now wet jacket? Joked Naruto, whose jacket was now a bit wet thanks to Hinata's jutsu, causing Hinata to blush at the thought of Naruto removing his jacket. Still, much to Hinata's satisfaction, Naruto decided to remove the jacket anyway, seeing as they were showing off water jutsus. Underneath the jacket, Naruto had a mesh shirt, and while Hinata was wishing that there wasn't anything under said jacket, the mesh shirt still hugged Naruto rather tightly, and the bright red Hinata could make out the outline of a more muscular Naruto. While he wasn't stacked, his muscles had developed to the point where they were well toned and built evenly, thanks to the use of gravity seals that worked every muscle in his body as opposed to just a select few that traditional training weights would. This was due to the gravity seals distributing the increased weight uniformly across Naruto's entire body, thus working every muscle evenly instead of a select few. The poor girl was doing her best to hold herself back from just tearing Naruto's shirt off and exposing the bare prize beneath. After a few more minutes of fooling around with one another, Hinata decided to show Naruto the most powerful water jutsu she had picked up. Having Naruto take a lot, steps backwards, Hinata performed the most powerful water jutsu she had acquired. Suten, Great Waterfall Vortex. Water began to circle around the young Hyuga before extending outwards in a violent vortex and crashing into the trees at the far end of the training ground. Whoa! Exclaimed Naruto. He had seen that jutsu once before, when Kakashi-sensei used it against Zabuza in the wave, and while he would have to admit that Kakashi's was stronger by far, he was still impressed that Hinata could pull off a powerful water jutsu like that, even though her primary element wasn't water. However, when he looked over at Hinata, Naruto could see she was a bit winded, that last technique of hers requiring a considerable amount of chakra, and Hinata was not the one in their relationship with the ungodly chakra reserves. It appeared as if it was his turn to show off a few jutsus while Hinata recovered some of her chakra. I only know 2 more water jutsus besides those 2, one's a simple jutsu and the other one's maybe a low B rank jutsu at best, commented Hinata. Still, that's amazing that you can do a high rank jutsu like that, replied Naruto. I'll go while you rest. Ero Sennin only taught me one basic water jutsu but I do have one higher rank water jutsu that I found it in my clan scrolls, you know, it still feels kind of weird saying that. Stepping out onto the creek, Naruto prepared his own jutsu. Suten, Spiraling Torrent. The water erupted from beneath Naruto's feet, swirling into a mighty whirlpool that extended outward around the blonde Uzumaki for about 10 meters, tearing any unfortunate trees that were close enough to the bank of the stream to get caught in Naruto's jutsu from their roots. Naruto proceeded, moving on to the 2 original jutsus he made when Ero Sennin was nagging on him to create his own jutsu. Well, only one was created then, the other followed a bit later. He unleashed his futon, Fox Gale, upon a poor, unsuspecting tree, the fox's claws cleaving through the trunk with ease. Following up, Naruto unleashed the fire version of said jutsu, Kaiten, Fire Fox, out OFN. Yes, I know, upon the fallen remains of said tree as the flaming fox ignited the wood into a smoldering inferno. Shadow Clone Jutsu! Exclaimed Naruto, making a clone. I can even have one of my clones use one version while I use the other. Nodding to his clone, both Narutos used a different version of their foxy jutsu. Kitsune's Wrath. As the 2 jutsus combined, a large golden fox with multiple tails, this one in particular had 4, formed before engulfing a large area in a golden-white flame. Needless to say, now every tree in the area was quaking in their roots. Naruto-kun can actually perform jutsus of different elements with his clones. I've heard that's an extremely difficult task, and the only ones I know of who could do something along those lines was the Sandaime and Yondaime Hokages, thought Hinata. This was true in that since the chakra was shared between the original and the clones, the elemental attunement of the clone's chakra was synced with the original. Breaking this synchronization, while not impossible, was incredibly difficult and was one of the later milestones in the journey towards true mastery of the Shadow Clone Jutsu. Okay Hinata-chan, think you can show me any awesome wind jutsus you've come across? Asked Naruto. Most of my wind jutsus I've incorporated into my Yusho stance, commented Hinata. Though there is one I really do want to show you. Lee sat in a meditative position atop one of the training posts, reflecting on everything that had happened that day between him and Yakumo. First her clan had tried to fake their heiress virtually spitting on the ground in which he walked, and then his friends had devised a plan to help the 2 youthful lovers out. It was then that Lee felt a hand rest on his shoulders. Turning around, he found that said hand belonged to none other than his spandex-wearing teacher. Guy-sensei. Letting out a held breath, Guy took a seat on one of the training posts next to Lee. Lee, I heard about what happened regarding you, Yakumo, and Yakumo's clan, spoke Guy. Ever since you brought her along with you to train with almost 2 years ago, she's displayed a will just as strong as your own. Just like you, she put her mind towards becoming a splendid shinobi, despite the fact that her body was rather weak. Despite what everyone kept telling her, you're too weak to become a ninja, you'll just get injured, your body will never withstand the stresses of a ninja's life. She kept pushing herself and strengthening her body to the point where she could prove all those naysayers wrong and become a shinobi. While even I doubt she'll be more than passable in taijutsu, she's found her specialty in genjutsu, and just like you train taijutsu to the extreme, she's worked diligently to train her genjutsu abilities to the point where they will know no rival. Lee, you two are actually a lot alike. Both of you have that strength that drives you forward. No matter what the world throws at you. Both of you have known the hardships that come with the paths that you have chosen. Both of you know what you must continue to do to prove that despite all the doubts, you can in fact become splendid ninja. And with everything, both of you have found comfort and compassion with one another, said Guy. But, Yakumo's not just any girl. She is the heiress of one of Konoha's noble clans, and as such they do have to make sure that the man she eventually ends up with will be for the best of their clan. But I can't just let Yakumo-chan go like that. I've put in too much effort with her just to let her go because her clan says so, replied Lee, tears coming from his eyes. I care too much for her. A small smile appeared on Guy's face. I know. I haven't seen fires as bright as the two of you since, well, I honestly don't think I've seen fires burn as brightly as the two of yours. Which is why, Guy paused momentarily, building up the suspense. Which is why you must show everyone just how bright your youthful flames can burn and that you are the best person there for Yakumo. Guy-sensei, said Lee before allowing his entire being to ignite in a brilliant flame of youthful passion. Yosh. I understand Guy-sensei, I shall do everything in my own power to prove to Yakumo-chan's family that I am the right man for her. And I will never give up, no matter how difficult the task may be. Yes, Lee. That's the spirit. Let your youth be your guide to true love, shouted Guy. I will, Guy-sensei. I will make you proud and I will show the entire universe just how brightly my flames can burn when the one I love is at stake. And fear not, Lee, I will do whatever I must to ensure your youth shines even brighter than 10,000 suns. Guy-sensei. Lee. Guy-sensei. Lee. On the outskirts of Konoha. A squad of Anbu was returning from what would be the final mission for two of their members. As of this day, Ice and Rabbit would be returning to the regular Jonin forces of the village, as recommended by the Hokage. Since Ice and Rabbit joined the Konoha Anbu Hunter Nin unit nearly 3 years ago, they had proven to be valuable assets to the village. However, both of them felt that it was time for them to return to the regular forces and that their skills would be better off there. As they approached the gates of Konoha, a chill ran down Rabbit's spine before all of them noticed a great flame erupt from the village itself. A large wave crash overtopped the Hokage monument with the sun setting directly behind it, and cries of youth calling out to the very heavens. With speed that would make even the yellow flash envious, Rabbit was already bolting in the opposite direction, away from Konoha and screaming, I'm getting the F away from that hellhole before that freaking monstrosity can challenge me to another one of his challenges. Ice and the other two Anbu just sweat dropped at this. And here we go again, sighed one of the Anbu. I wish he would stop doing that. I know Guy can be a little extreme, but if someone didn't know, they'd think he was actually trying to flee the village and I'd hate to have him marked as a missing nin, although I honestly can understand, commented the other unnamed Anbu. All three Anbu were darting off in pursuit of their owl comrade. About 30 minutes later, the team of Anbu passed through the village gates, two of them dragging a bound Rabbit, while Ice carried the rather large sword that Rabbit wielded. As they arrived at the Anbu HQ, a few agents noticed the bound Rabbit and one spoke up. All the Anbu present knew what was up as this was not a first-time occurrence. Yeah, I know. That last one really was like nothing else, commented the Anbu referring to the genjutsu, which had been dubbed as the eternal passionate flames of 1,000 setting suns of youth. This one in particular appeared to be even more devastating than the original ocean sunset of eternal flaming youth, if that was even possible, and shockingly it was. About time you two showed up, shouted Ino as everyone's attention turned to the couple who had just walked into Bar Q. Naruto, is that really you? Asked Shuji, earning a grin from the blonde who had just walked into the restaurant accompanied by a certain Hyuga. Looking around, Naruto spied everyone, except Sasuke and Kakashi-sensei, sitting at the table. Shino was next to Fu. Shikamaru had been dragged there by Temari, who was now done with the preparations for the Chunin exams. Apparently they no longer were keeping their relationship secret from Ino. Neji was with Tenten and Lee was with Yakumo, a rare moment that the group's newest couple. Kiba and Akamaru were already trying to contain themselves at the delicious smell of grilling meat, and Sakura was next to Ino, with a seat on Ino's side and two open for Naruto and Hinata. The last two at the table were Kurenai and Asuma, which had surprised Naruto a bit that they had actually shown, but he wasn't complaining. Naruto and Hinata took their seats in the open seats next to Sakura. Looks like everyone's here, well except Team. A small tick mark appeared on Sakura's head. She wasn't mad at anyone present, just the certain scarecrow that was keeping her Sasuke-kun away from her. Well, now everyone's here, said Asuma, a few seconds later as he pointed to the door where a young man, who could easily pass for a woman, was standing. Haku? Asked a pleasantly surprised Naruto, getting a nod from Haku. Haku was wearing a turquoise coat with a pair of loose pants. It was kind of like what he wore when he and Naruto first met back in the Land of Waves, but it was tailored more for civilian life, not shinobi life. By now, Haku was 16 years in age and he still retained a rather feminine look, something that was apparently characteristic of all Yukis whether they be male or female. So does this mean the Anbu gave you a bit of a break? Actually, today was the end of the last mission Zabuza-sama and I did as part of them. We have been discussing it for some time and we are rejoining the regular forces, said Haku as he took the seat next to Ino. Hello, Ino-chan. Ino let out a slight blush at Haku's warm smile to her. You know, Haku's actually kind of cute. And he seems really sweet too. I wonder if he's single, thought Ino, letting out a very faint giggle that didn't go unnoticed by Sakura. Sakura whispered something into Ino's ear and the two of them giggled a bit, confusing most of the guys at the table. It looks like your party has arrived, may I take your orders? Asked the waitress. Going around, the orders were taken and conversation began with many asking for a story of what Naruto's trips with Jiraiya were like. The one that they found most interesting was Naruto's little escapade in the Land of Snow. Seeing it came as a pleasant surprise to Konoha when an ambassador from Yuki showed up at the gates of Konoha requesting to negotiate an alliance and trade agreement. It was known that ever since the takeover of Yuki by Kazuhana Doto that Yuki was considered hostile to Konoha as Konoha had sent some aid to fight Doto's takeover. A few other stories regarding missions were told. Probably another one that reached right up there as one of the more exciting stories was told by Team 8 where they had been assigned to escort a prince by the name of Tsuki Mikaru during the final leg of his world tour. However, upon returning home to the Crescent Moon Kingdom, they had found themselves in the middle of a coup d'etat where the current advisor had attempted to overthrow the current regime out of greed and a strong desire for the nation's bountiful wealth. Thanks to the actions of Team 8, the coup was ground to a halt and the leader, Shibadaba, and his three hired shinobi, Ishidate, Kongo, and Karenbana were defeated and brought to justice. They had proved to be tricky opponents at first, but once their strange abilities were analyzed, the fight against the three hired ninja proved not to be much trouble for Team 8. Team 8 wasn't the only team with their own stories and Team Guy had one or two of their own, in which Naruto had actually already heard one night while they were all getting dinner at the resort town on the other side of the continent. This mission involved a mission to Hoshigakure to investigate the disappearance of a strange star in which the ninja of that village drew some strange chakra from to augment their own abilities. For some reason, the training of this star's chakra had been ended by the Sandaime Hoshikage, but was ordered resumed by the current leader of the village, Akihoshi, who in reality was looking to claim the star's power for his own. Team Guy managed to defeat Akihoshi after he had taken in too much and became overloaded with the star's power, returning the star to the village but not before revealing the reason why the training was ended in the first place. After realizing what the star did to them, the village of Hoshigakure resolved themselves to become as strong as the 5 great villages without the aid of the star's power. Team 10 would have told a story but Chuji was too busy inhaling barbecue. Ino was too infatuated with a certain ice user that she was sitting next to as well as some talking with Sakura, and Shikamaru just didn't feel like saying anything despite Temari's urging. As dinner finished up, Kurenai stood up, wanting to make an announcement to not just her team, but all the others present as well. I want to thank you for the lovely evening tonight. It was a wonderful way to spend my last night as your sensei, announced Kurenai. What? Shouted everyone after letting what Kurenai was about to say sink in. The only three who didn't seem surprised were Sakura, Shikamaru, and Hinata. Shino could also probably be mistakenly lumped into that group, but even by the Aberame standards, he was surprised. You can't, Kurenai-sensei, shouted Kiba. Why are you leaving? It's not like I want to leave, but I've been ordered by Tsunade-sama. I will still be around if any of you want to visit, but it won't be as sensei for some time. You see, I've just recently discovered that I am pregnant and will be on maternity leave for quite some time, announced Kurenai. One of things Tsunade stressed on the most was pulling a kunoichi from duty in the early stages of pregnancy, as early as a month or two, as the battlefield was no place for a soon-to-be mother. Really? Squealed Ino. Kurenai smiled. Who's the father? That would be me, I hope. I am the father, right? Joked Asuma as he stood up next to Kurenai. Of course you are, giggled Kurenai. Congratulations you two. Cheered Ino and a few others. So does this mean you two are getting married? Asuma actually proposed to me a month ago, but we've been waiting for the right time to announce it. As to when the wedding's going to be, we've decided to have it after the baby arrives, said Kurenai. And yes, you're all invited. I'm afraid this is where we must call an end to this most youthful evening, Yakumo-chan, said Lee as the group exited from barbecue. I just wish my uncle was so oblivious to see what I see in you. I swear when I get home, I'm going to pound some sense into him for that stunt he pulled on you earlier, replied Yakumo. No, please don't, said Lee. I will prove to him that I am worthy of being with you. That I swear. Lee smiled a glistening smile while holding up his hand in the knee sky pose. And until then, we will just have to have faith that our friends will help us out whenever we want to get together. I know. I just hope it won't be too long before he sees that you really are an amazing person, said Yakumo, giving Lee a soft K goodnight before meeting up with Kurenai to return to her home. Don't worry Lee, if there's anything you need, just ask, Naruto said as he rested his hand on Lee's shoulder. His other hand was in the hands of a certain Hyuga girl. We're your friends Lee, and Yakumo is our friend as well. We want the two of you to be happy and whatever happens, we'll help the two of you out no matter what, agreed Hinata. Behind the two of them was the rest of the Konoha 15, minus Sasuke, who was the latest victim of a certain one-eyed Jonin, giving Lee a bunch of smiles and thumbs up. Thank you, everyone, said Lee as he began to tear up a little. As that happened everyone began praying that Guy wouldn't show up and the two would cast that horrific genjutsu that they did earlier in the day. And once again, it's just us, said Naruto to his girlfriend as everyone else departed to go about their own business for the rest of the evening. Omake, aftermath of the eternal passionate flames of 1,000 setting suns of youth. It was a clam day in Konoha with clear skies and everyone going about the daily business. It was one of those days where no one expected anything terrible and earth-shattering to happen. Well, today was not one of those days. Cries of youth were soon heard throughout the entire village and before everyone knew it, they were engulfed in a raging inferno of eternal passion. Thankfully, the flames were soon extinguished by a massive wave of raging youth that swept over the entire village, crashing down upon the village from over the Hokage monument. As the water settled, the intense rays of the setting sun swept over the village, bathing the village in the most intense rays of youthful energy that the universe had ever experienced. Once everyone recovered from the horrific genjutsu that had just befallen their village, everyone found themselves wearing some sort of spandex tracksuit. Upon further inspection, everyone in the village realized that their hair had also been styled in a glossy bowl C and their eyebrows had become incredibly bushy. Jutsu. Suten, Water Whip, Rank, C, uses, Hinata, Haku, and probably a few other water uses. Suten, Great Waterfall Vortex, Rank, A, uses, Zabuza, Kakashi, Hinata. Suten, Tearing Torrent, an Uzumaki clan jutsu where water erupts from the base of the user's feet and surrounds them with a mighty whirlpool of water, blasting anyone within a 10 meters radius. This jutsu possesses a great deal of power that will virtually destroy anything within its range. Rank A, uses, Naruto. Kaiten, Fire Fox, the fire version of Futon, Fox Scale, where Naruto conjures a fox-shaped mass of fire that ignites anything it touches. Rank B. Uses Naruto. Kitsune's Wrath, a combination jutsu with Futon, Fox Gale and Kaiten, Fire Fox. A multi-tailed fox of flame and wind is formed that engulfs its target and the surrounding area in a powerful golden white flame. This jutsu requires exceptional skills with a shadow clone to perform. Also, the more tails on the fox that is conjured, the more powerful the jutsu. Rank A. Uses Naruto. Eternal passionate flames of 1000 setting suns of youth, the ultimate genjutsu in existence. The youthfulness exerted by this jutsu more than even the gods themselves can comprehend. No one knows how to counter this, and should it rear its youthful and bushy-browed head, all you can do is embrace it, embrace the youth with a bold C haircut, bushy eyebrows, and a spandex jumpsuit of a youthful color, preferably green. Rank SSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSssss. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.